The movie begins with Hannah and his lovely wife Arishat playing joyously in their garden, somewhere in Numidia, free city of Africa. Their happiness ultimately comes to an end when they heard the bells in the city, signifying imminent war. The two couples geared up for war together, after which they headed to the front line, while General Akasis and his troops were already closing in on them. Jugurtha, who happens to be the leader of this small city, motivated his people before the Great War, after which they offered sacrifices to their god. Jugurtha approached Hannah and asked him why he didn't make an offer today, but Hannah said he preferred to sacrifice Romans. Few minutes later, Ares had also walked up to him, then thereafter they exchanged their rings and kissed passionately. General Akasis, on the other hand, was already on the outskirts of the city, so he gave an instruction to furl sail and strike water, which imminently increased the speed of the ships. Hannah was also a commander in the making, so he told his soldiers to stand strong in the face of adversity, and stay together and listen to his command. The Numidian troops attacked first, as Hannah gave the order to release bombs on their ships before they close in, but the Romans also shot back and Chair had more effect. Furthermore, the General Akasis gave the order to unleash arrows on them, and Hannah's soldiers shot back, but it seemingly didn't have any effect on them, rather more destruction was exerted on them. The Romans evenly raised up their tower and bid to go over the Numidian walls, but the tower bridge got stuck. General Akasis was chauvinistic, so he decided to make his way towards the tower bridge, and eventually brought it down for his soldiers to begin the invasion. Akasis didn't chicken out as he single-handedly led his troops on the expedition. General Akasis fought with bravery and despicable skill, but he was almost killed by Arishat, who shot at him but missed. Akasis was bizarrely ballistic, so out of anger he commanded his archers to shoot her down, and she fell dead into the water. Hannah was distracted by the sight. That was when a guard knocked him into the water also. Hannah woke up in the afterlife realm, and as he stood up, he saw his wife boarding a boat to the afterlife. Hannah was awfully distraught, so he tried to run towards her and stop her from crossing over, but it was too late and she was already long gone. On spur of moment, Hannah rose back up on the shore of the sea, and the first person he went after was his dead wife floating in the river, but the Roman guards took him away. After the battle, it was a holocaust. General Akasis gave the order to burn down the battle remains for the glory of Rome. After the incident, the captured soldiers were ignited with the seal of slaves in the Roman Empire, after which they were loaded onto the galley for transport. Hannah was in an awfully daunted state, but then he saw Jugurtha, who was in a more miserable state than he is, so he helped him to dress and cloth his battle wounds. It is revealed in the course of the movie that Lucius, now known as Hannah, was shipped to Africa when he was still very young to evade the mob that wanted to get rid of him, because he's Maximus's son. General Akasis and his triumphant troops evenly arrived at the port of Rome, Ostia. The captured were astounded on the magnificent sight of Rome, as they haven't seen such marvelous edifice before. Akasis was loved by the people as they felt he was their hero. He walked through the steps of glory to meet with the twin emperors Geta and Caracalla, and present the glorious fortune of his conquered to them with humility. Emperor Geta crowned Akasis hero of the people, after which he told him that there will be games in the Colosseum in honor of his conquest. Akasis took the opportunity to tell the emperors that his days of conquest are over, so he needs some respite from Rome to spend time with his wife, but the emperors denied him retirement, and further aggressively told him that he also needs to conquer Persia and India before he retires, and he sluggishly bent to their will. The captured soldiers, now slaves, were paraded through Antium, the outskirts of Rome. They were brought to a place where they'll meet the master of beasts, master of gladiators, popularly known as Macrinus. The crowd jeered for him on his arrival, then he requested for the newly captured to be brought to the arena. After a while, black wild monkeys were released out of their cages into the arena, and they were shot with flutes to make them go ballistic. One of the monkeys jumped on Jugurtha and devoured him. The same monkey also attempted to devour Hannah, but they were evenly matched. Hannah aggressively bit the hands of the monkey, and it was at this sight that Macrinus took a special liking to him, as his guts told him Hannah was special. Hannah eventually got the monkey in a chokehold, and after he squeezed tightly for a while, he ultimately killed it, so Macrinus agreed to buy him. In the eve of the night, General Akasis sneaked out of the palace to go meet with his wife. Akasis' wife Lucilla was overly blissful and gratified that her husband came back to her unharmed. The chosen slaves were brought to Macrinus's domain, after which Macrinus' trusted guard Bigo gave the slaves a pep talk on how the arena turns slaves into gladiators, and gladiators into free men. Bigo afterwards closely inspected the slaves, exempting Hannah, after which he brought them to the dining to feed. The day the slaves are tested arrived. Macrinus called for Hannah first, but as he was talking to him, he refused to answer, so Macrinus felt violence was the way. Bigo engaged Hannah in a fight on Macrinus's instruction. The fight was a sturdy one, and Bigo seemed to have the upper hand, but Hannah knocked him out cold. Macrinus requested a private audience with Hannah. He was pleased with his abilities, as his criteria for choosing gladiators is rage, and Hannah is blessed bountifully with it. He further asked Hannah to name the person's death that can satisfy his fury, and Hannah told him that it's Achasis he wants. The two of them came to an agreement, as Hannah would fight as a gladiator, while Macrinus would find a way to offer Acacia's head to him. Lucilla hated it that her husband had to fight wars for tyrants who call themselves emperors, so she suggested that he leads his loyal army and austere to end the tyranny of the emperors. It was a function day for all of the notable dignitaries in Rome, including the emperors. Macrinus arrived at the event and was warmly welcomed by Senator Thraex. Just before they got inside the occasion, they placed a wage of 2,000 gold on the winner of their best warriors. Senator Thraex cleared the room, after which he announced the fight of Macrinus Barbarian and the mighty Vincent from his own stable. The two warriors were brought to the arena, after which Emperor Caracalla stated the rules of combat, making it out to be a fight till the death. The fight was a brutal one as both of them were evenly matched, but Hannah ended up killing the mighty Vincent. Emperor Geta was immensely entertained and delighted, so he permitted Hannah the Barbarian to speak, but Hannah ended up reciting old Roman poems, and this amused the emperor even more, and it led him to look forward to Hannah performing in the Colosseum arena. After the event, Macrinus gave Hannah 2 gold coins and they liaised on how well he fought. Macrinus became suspicious of him, because he was baffled on how Hannah knew ancient Roman poetry, but Hannah waved off the suspicion, by telling him that he heard the poem from a captured Roman guard in Africa. Lucilla scurried to the underground fissures in the temple, where she was supposed to meet with the senators to plan for the takeover. After talking for a while, the senators agreed to support their venture to take back the city, and restore Rome to where it should be. The slaves turned gladiators were taken through the gateway of Rome. The guards evenly transported the gladiators to the Colosseum arena, to get them prepared for their first battle. Macrinus met with Thraex on the sidelines. He suggested to Thraex that they should double their wages, and Thraex joyously obliged. Bigo led the gladiators through the heart of the Colosseum, to their quarters where they'll temporarily reside. The first day of games arrived and the whole crowd was going ballistic as they loved Colosseum games. The master of games first of honored the emperors, after which he launched the beginning of the games, inviting the gladiators into the arena. After the gladiators besieged the stage, the master of the games then called in their challenger, who was an undefeated champion in the arena, by the name of Giselle the Destroyer. Giselle scurried pridefully into the arena, riding on a hefty mighty rhino. Hannah led the rest of the gladiators as he told them to hold together in unison. His plan initially worked, but one of the gladiators went out of line, and he was rammed onto the wall by Giselle's rhino. Lucilla watched in awe as Hannah kissed the sands exactly like Maximus, and that was where her suspicion started. Hannah put up a flare of powder in the air which clouded the rhino's vision, and it ended up stuck rigidly on the wall. Giselle scurried with confidence, and engaged Hannah in a handed combat. The other gladiators gave Hannah a shield, and he used it to deflect all of Giselle's attack, but it wasn't enough as Giselle knocked him down regardless. The whole crowd started rallying for Hannah to be shown mercy, so Geta asked Lucilla counsel on what to do, and he suggested that he shows mercy. Emperor Geta decided to be lenient and showed mercy, but Hannah rejected his proposition, as he'd rather die than obtain mercy from a Roman. He continued the fight with Giselle, and on spur of moment he stabbed him vicariously, after which the emperor gave the signal and Hannah beheaded him. The whole crowd went ballistic on the performance, and they started chanting Hannah's name, and even ended up giving him a standing ovation. After the fight, the other gladiators jeered for him as he walked past through them. Lucilla afterwards went to her quarters to confirm her suspicion. She read the insignia written on her wall, and discovered that it was the same one Hannah sang to the emperor, after which she ascertained that he was her lost son Lucius. It is revealed that before Maximus died, he told Lucilla that their son is safe now, and he has arranged for his disappearance as many men wants to kill him, because he's the successor to the throne. Robbie was cleaning Hannah's battle wounds, and as they were liaising, he told him of his former glories as a gladiator when he was young. As Robbie was treating him, Macrinus scurried happily to meet with his champion. He congratulated Hannah, and further told him that he feels he's special. After the pep talk, Macrinus headed straight to Lucilla's house as she requested to see him. Macrinus felt it as an honor to meet with Lucilla, so he greeted her with utmost respect. Lucilla then proceeded to the main reason why she called him. She asked him how he got his gladiators and he told her that they're prisoners of war, and it was then that she really confirmed her suspicion on Hannah. Before Macrinus left, he saw Lucilla's father's statue and the striking resemblance he had to Hannah. Macrinus immediately summed it up, that Lucilla had a child they hid from the rest of the world. Lucilla secretly walloped out of the temple. She headed to the Colosseum to meet with Hannah. Lucilla eventually arrived at the cage where Hannah was kept. She inquired if he still knows her, but Hannah bore this hate in his heart, because his beloved wife was killed by her husband. Lucilla tried apologizing to him but all to no avail. As the conversation was ongoing, Hannah's rage grew larger and larger, and he screamed for her to get out of his cell. As she came outside, she met with Acacius her husband, and she further confided in him that her son Lucius is alive. She pleaded with Acacius to help save her son before the third day of the tournament, as she has strong beliefs that he won't survive that long. Acacius wholly accepted to help her save her son, and as this conversation was ongoing, a handmaid was eavesdropping secretly. Bigot trained all the gladiators on how to furl and strike water, because their next tournament is with a ship. The third day of the great games finally begun, and Hannah gave the rest of the gladiators a pep talk about survival. The water that the gladiators were to sail on was filled with sharks. The gladiators were pitted up against the Persians, two enemies of Rome slaughtering themselves. What great source of pleasure for the Romans! Hannah outrightly led his crew to initiate the attack. They scraped their ships onto their opponent's ship, which they used in dismantling their sailing instruments. Hannah afterwards sailed the ship with the joint help of his crew head-on onto their opponent's ship, after which they engaged them in a handed combat, and that was how they won the tournament. On spur of moment, Hannah attempted to execute Acacius, but he was distracted and he missed his target. After this incident, Hannah was proclaimed victor of the tournament. The handmaid that eavesdropped on Lucilla's conversation came to Thrax to tell him of their imminent treachery. Few minutes later, Macrinus stormed into his home and bid to collect his wages. Thrax have lost a wage 2 times now to Macrinus, and his debt was outrageous, so he came to collect. Thrax decided to buy his loyalty by telling him of Lucilla and Acacius' plan, but rather than what he was expecting, Macrinus told him to pack out, as he's the new owner of his house by law. Acacius together with few of his guards headed to where the gladiators are kept in bid to rescue Hannah, but they were intercepted by the Praetorian guards. Acacius attempted running away, but he was already surrounded. The Praetorian guards brought the traitors before the emperors, and Caracalla wanted to kill Acacius with immediate effect, but Geta convinced him that his death must be public. After the traitors had been convicted, Emperor Geta thanked Macrinus for his undying loyalty to the empire. Hannah told Riley of his dream of crossing the Dark River, but then he noticed that the insignia on the wall have a scratched name on it, so he inquired who it was and Riley told him it's Maximus. Riley further told him that during his time, Maximus was their captain, a fearless one at that. Riley also took Hannah to the place where they bury historic gladiators. Hannah saw Maximus' armor and as he touched it, he rekindled some memories of the past. The fourth day of the tournament arrived, but this time instead of the gladiators, it was Acacius who was brought out, now labeled as the enemy of the people. Acacius fought against his previous guards, and he fought so bravely that he eliminated them all. By then something vicious happened. The master of the games called in Hannah to the arena. Acacius tried to talk to Hannah, but he wasn't ready to listen as he was still wallowing in intense rage because of his wife's death. The two of them were evenly matched opponents, and both of them were unrelentless in their attack. After a moment of really intense fighting, Acacius told Hannah of his origin, after which he dropped down his weapons and surrendered. Emperor Geta refused his submission as he ordered Hanba to kill him. Hannah couldn't bear the thought of killing him, so he too laid down his weapon and refused to kill him, so the emperor commanded his archers to shoot him down, which they eventually did and he wound up dead, leaving Hannah in utter dismay. Acacius was lost in an illusion of his wife crossing the river, but then Macrinus walked in and questioned why he let Acacius live after continually requesting for his head, but Hannah replied that he's a gladiator not a slave. It was then that Macrinus told him of his devious plan to take over the empire, but Hannah was against his plans and vowed to see his end. The rally continued as the people of Rome clustered the palace, calling for the emperor's heads. Emperor Geta and Caracalla engaged in a heated argument, as they were dishing out blames to each other, then Macrinus obliged to talk to Caracalla in solitary and reason with him. He told Caracalla to get up, after which he convinced him that Geta his twin brother would convince the Senate that it's all his fault, and they would name him as a public enemy to satisfy the outburst of rage of the people. Macrinus also deviously presented him with a solution, which entails him killing his brother first, before his brother killed him. Caracalla, filled with lies from Macrinus, angrily advanced towards his brother with a blade. He held his neck tightly and on spur of moment, Macrinus helped him to massacre his brother. Lucilla met again with her son Lucius, but this time they've already come to an understanding unlike before. Lucilla gifted him with Maximus' ring, and Lucius wore the ring next to his wife's ring. Lucius afterwards apologized for Acacius' death, but Lucilla told him that it isn't his fault, as he lived and died for what is right, after which they hugged passionately, and Lucilla promised to try her best to get him out of there. Emperor Caracalla called for a convergence of the Senate. At the gathering, Caracalla appointed his pet monkey Dondus as his first consul to take over military and civic roles of the empire, and further appointed Macrinus as his second consul, to the immense surprise of the entire Senate. Macrinus took to the podium to give his speech, but before he started, he showed them the head of Emperor Geta as a show of strength, and to convince those who are against his rulership to stay in line. After the little show of might, the senators all raised their hands in support of his leadership. Lucilla approached Macrinus in his chambers, and he told her that Rome has fallen, he only needed to give it a push. He further told her that the only truth in his Rome is the law of the strongest. According to Macrinus, Lucilla's death would clear his path to the throne, and at tomorrow games he would prevail. Lucullus called out to Robbie while been locked in his cell. He beckoned on him to help him get a message to Ostia in the morning, after which he gave him Acessus' ring, instructing him to deliver it to General Darius Sextus. Before Robbie left, he asked who he should tell them sent him with the ring, and it was then that Hanna revealed himself as Lucius, Prince of Rome. Lucius further told him to tell the general that he's summoning the army in defense of the Republic. Robbie collected the ring and was about to leave, but Lucius requested one last thing of him. He asked Robbie to give him his keys. Robbie gallantly rode off almost immediately to the outskirts of Rome. He imminently arrived at Ostia, and he barged in to meet with the general. General Darius closely examined the ring, and he unearthed that it was Maximus's ring passed down to Acessus. He immediately inquired who gave him the ring, and Robbie told him it's Lucius, Prince of Rome. Lucius, on the other hand, was lost in thoughts on looking at the arrow that killed his wife, while General Darius was already leading his army to the gates of Rome. The last day of the tournament eventually arrived, and Emperor Caracalla graced the Senate with his presence. Before the emperor took to the podium, he inquired from Macrinus if it is actually necessary to kill Lucilla, and Macrinus told him that until she dies, he'll never know peace, after which the emperor proceeded to the arena. Bigot glaringly walked towards Lucius to inform him that today would be his last fight. Bigot showed him the wooden sword, informing him that he has to earn his freedom and defend his mother. On hearing this, Lucius bursted out of the cage, and his outburst sparked a fascinating rebellion. The gladiators eliminated all the guards on site, and it was then that Lucius eventually killed Bigot for his wrong choice of words. Few minutes later, Lucius proceeded into the bunker where great gladiators are buried. In there, he took Maximus' sword and shield in preparation for the battle ahead. The master of the games announced the format of the last tournament. According to him, Lucilla is to be served justice at the hands of the Praetorian guards. Lucius, on the other hand, dramatically walked in on the other gladiators. He acknowledged that he's no general of any sort, but they're all soldiers. According to him, not until now, all they have fought for is another day's survival, but from here onwards, they should join him in the fight for freedom beyond the arena walls. The gladiators were all hyped up after his speech, and they all agreed to follow him to battle, even if it means giving up their lives for the cause. The master of the games further said that due to the emperor's mercy, Lucilla would be granted a single gladiator to defend her against the whole Praetorian army. The Praetorian army surrounded Lucius as he walked into the arena, and the entire crowd went ballistic on seeing him. The tournament eventually started, but to Macrinus' surprise, gladiators sprouted out from all angles and joined the fight. As the fight was ongoing, Macrinus got inside information that the army of Acessus is just outside of Rome, and this information left him devastated, but he maintained composure and told the general to ride to the gate to hold them. The Praetorian guards were evenly outmatched by the gladiators, but as they were fighting, a riot ensued among the crowd and the whole arena was left in ruin. Emperor Caracalla was simpering profusely as the chaos scared him to his bones, but then Macrinus forced in a poison into his ears, killing him slowly. Lucius imminently got to his mother and was about to save her, but Macrinus didn't want to lose out completely, so he shot her down in cold blood. After killing Lucilla, Macrinus boarded a horse and bid to elope the country, but Lucius noticed him leaving, so he hastily followed him at close call. The royal army were now faced head-to-head with General Acessus' army. It was a nasty face-off. Macrinus rode through the army to the front and bid to escape, but he slowed down on seeing Acessus' army, and immediately came to the realization that there's no escape for him. On spur of moment, Lucius also charged through the army to engage in a standoff with Macrinus. Lucius used his horse to ram into Macrinus, and they both fell down, initiating the start of a brutal combat. The two of them went at each other with no hesitation whatsoever, and Macrinus initially gained the upper hand. Macrinus pushed Lucius into the water and subsequently tried to drown him. He attempted stabbing Lucius countless times, but his blade kept on gliding off Maximus's armor that Lucius was wearing. Few minutes later, Lucius picked up a stone from underneath the water, and aggressively used it on Macrinus. When Macrinus lost balance, he took up his sword and sliced through his hand, and thereafter ferociously killed him. After the battle, Lucius beckoned on the royal guards that there's no further need for bloodshed. He revealed to them that he's the Prince of Rome, after which they all jeered his name in one voice, and that was how the movie ended. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe and comment. Thank you.